Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we're continuing in our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter. Divinity and Divine Service is the name that Prabhupada has given it. I don't think these have chapter names, so they're supplied by the commentators. And we're up to text number 19. And before I start, I read a couple of other, just to refresh you, read the translations before. But first we'll say like this: Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So if we go back a little bit, I'll just read the translation starting with text 16. O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. 17. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Supersoul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. 18. By regular attendance in the class on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and the loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So we are there. Now here we are with text number 19. The Sanskrit goes like this. Tadarajas tamo bhava kama lobha dayas chaye chitair eta chita etair anavitam stitam sattve prasidati. The translation, the running translation: as soon as irrevocable, loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. So you can see here, tada, at that time, sounds like a trumpet, tada, just tada at that time. And then you have that compound, rajastamo bhava, the situations of raja and tama, the modes of ignorance and the modes of passion. And then those effects are then listed: kama, lobha, adayaha, etc. So lust and desires, hankering, whatever, and so on, chaye. Then it says here, chitta, the mind or the heart. Prabhupada in the word for word says mind, and chitta is in the running translation is the heart. The consciousness, basically. and then he becomes fixed. The mind becomes a fixed anavidam without being affected. In other words, by these other modes. That's what it means, affected. The word anavidam in the dictionary is not wounded or unhurt. So your consciousness is now free from being afflicted or affected by these two modes of ignorance and passion. And then stitam sattve becomes fixed in the mode of goodness, and thus prasidata, fully satisfied. Where he says here, he established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. If you want to read about these modes, there's a whole chapter in the Bhagavad Gita which describes them so that they're all quite recognizable. So let's read the purport. Prabhupada says, a living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. By constitutional position means the nature of the soul when is what he is supposed to be. In other words, the material condition where you identify with the body of mind is not constitutional. You're not made up for it. It's an illusory superimposition on what you are. So the normal constitutional position, fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. This state of existence is called Brahmabhuta or Atmananda. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochati nakanchati. This is the actual state of a living being. And in that state, Krishna says, he comes to me, Brahmabhuta, prasanatma, fully self-satisfied. That's the state of self-satisfaction. And neither hankers nor laments, and therefore free from the modes of nature. Mad bhaktim labate param, he attains my existence. So this state of existence, the natural state, the constitutional position, Brahmabhuta or Atmananda, this self-satisfaction is not like the satisfaction of the inactive fool. Leave me alone, I'm okay. Don't bother me. This self-satisfaction is not like the satisfaction of the inactive fool. The inactive fool is in the state of foolish ignorance, whereas the self-satisfied Atmanandi is transcendental to the material state of existence. This state of perfection is attained as soon as one is fixed in irrevocable devotional service. Irrevocable means it doesn't go away. Once you're there, you're there. Devotional service is not inactivity, but the unalloyed activity of the soul, the unmixed. The soul, when it's not mixed up with modes of nature, then it's called unalloyed. There's no alloys in there, no foreign things. And so it doesn't mean that because you have no material desires, you don't do anything. But no, you engage your senses in the service of the master of the senses. That's the definition of bhakti. So Prabhupada just wants to make that point that we don't renounce the senses as such, the two sets of senses, the senses by which the world comes into us, the cognitive senses, and those senses in which we act back on the world, the conative senses. And so another way of explaining them, the active and the karmindriya and gyanindriya, they're called in Sanskrit. Gyanindriya, the instruments by which we sense the world, and karmindriya, by which we act back on the world. The tongue is both. It's a gyanindriya and a karmindriya. Prabhupada said once, you'll be surprised to hear that devotional service begins with the tongue. But it's the one that has both of these functions of karmindriya and gyanindriya. So it begins with the tongue. Anyway, he continues now, the soul's activity becomes adulterated, that is mixed up with foreign substances, becomes adulterated in contact with matter. And as such, the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. You can see there lust, desire, hankering, mode of passion, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep, mode of ignorance. And there you have the whole economy, basically. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness. What did you say, Shraddha?
I think you just missed one sentence.
I missed a sentence? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I skipped a sentence. I got this text in front of me now, and it's hard to keep up where you are unless there's a little moving blip, and there's not. The effects of devotional service become manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance. So it's very clinical. We're given the description of these things, and we should see as we practice devotional service that those are becoming eliminated. If they're not, you're doing something wrong. So this is what you want to see, all these symptoms of modes of passion and modes of ignorance, and that is devotional service will do this. It's quite, it's empirical, it's clinical. You can see that it works. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness, and he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudeva, or the state of unmixed sattva, or Shuddha sattva. So not just the mode of goodness, but there's this transcendental goodness. The material mode of goodness, there's a little passion and ignorance on either ends of it, you might say. That's the mode of material goodness. I mean, there are people, or used to be people, just in the mode of goodness. And the good professor and so on like that, and satisfaction is mental satisfaction, likes poetry, mathematics, those kind of things, and is really, interested in intellectual things. That's sort of the mode of goodness. You don't see that anymore, though. I mean, that's not our standard of advancement. Our standard of advancement of civilization is the mode of passion. The result of the mode of passion is misery, so guess what? So the devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness and makes further progress. So you become happy because you're satisfied. And they get satisfaction from, I know people in the mode of goodness who have memorized volumes of poetry and can remember it all, the whole Hamlet or something like that, and just thinking about it, become satisfied. They've got the whole, volumes in their head, and they, like we do with Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, so you get fixed in the mode of goodness, and then further progress to rise to the position of Vasudev, or the state of unmixed sattva, or Shuddha sattva. Sometimes Prabhupada calls this, or it's called Vishuddha sattva, purified goodness. Only in this Shuddha sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord. Notice that sentence. He says, always see Krishna face to face. This is not an exaggeration. A devotee is always in the mode of unalloyed goodness. Therefore, he harms no one. But the non-devotee, however educated he may be, is always harmful. So a devotee is neither foolish nor passionate. By the way, the non-devotee who is educated but is still harmful, consider, Albert Einstein. He said when he was he believed in the God of Spinoza, which is basically an impersonal idea of God. So he was on that platform. And his interest in physics was to understand how God works, to understand the mind of God. Okay, what was the big result? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He was harmful because people figured out what he discovered, E equals mc squared, how much energy is there in the atom, and if you could, anyway. So this was, and finally he was persuaded to talk to some people in government, and they, whoa, let's work on this one. So a devotee is neither foolish nor passionate. The harmful, foolish, and passionate, so again you see passion and ignorance, cannot be devotees of the Lord, however they may advertise themselves as devotees by outward dress. I'll just interject here before I finish the sentence. Prabhupada gave the example of the cheaters and the cheated by something that was go on in Vrindavan. That in Vrindavan there are people who are quite renounced, and and supposedly from their renunciation, their retaining of semen and so on, they become very powerful. And there are women who think that if I have sex with such a man, I will get a very powerful son because his vital fluids will be very powerful. And so there are these women that go to Vrindavan in order to have a son from such powerful sages. Noticing this, another class of people who say, wow, look at all these women coming. They dress up like, say, powerful sages, and therefore they cheat the cheaters in this way. This was the example that Prabhupada gave. So this is the outward dress. Is sometimes it's actually done that way. People pretend to be sages, and I've seen them in Vrindavan. Sadhus sitting together at a little hut by the side of the road, and you see right behind the hut they're growing marijuana, I recognize from my previous activities, and that's what they do. So he's saying what the genuine devotee is. A devotee is always qualified with all the good qualities of God. Quantitatively, such qualifications may be different. In other words, God is great and we are very small. But qualitatively, both the Lord and his devotee are one and the same. This is how you can become close to God. You become, if you want to enter the fire, you have to become fire. The example is given, you're of the same nature as God. So when it speaks of oneness with God in the text, that means the qualitative identity. But God is very great and we are very tiny. 1/10,000th the tip of a hair in size is the 1/4 of an angstrom unit, according to Sariputta, is the size of a spirit soul, to be that little. Here, let's read Srila Prabhupada's purport. Excuse me, that's Prabhupada's purport, I'm sorry. I'm commenting on Prabhupada's purport, not the verse. Yeah, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So you notice a slightly different translation here. The mind becomes unaffected. See, tada, thereupon, or at that time, the mind becomes unaffected by lust, greed, anger, hatred, and illusion, which arise from rajas and tamas. You see that tada, rajas, tamo, bhava, that's one compound from that state of rajas and tamas. What are they? Kama, lobha, etc. Adayaha, kama and lobha, adayaha. These two things are what happens there. The mind becomes unaffected in this way, because and the word there, anavidam, sheta etar anavidam, becomes unaffected by these. Then the mind becomes fixed on the form of the Lord at the stage of asakti and becomes satisfied. So you may recall when we went through this, the stages of that verses we discussed already, which Prabhupada quotes at the end of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and other places. These things that you want to see happening, that all the bad things go away in this way, and there they are here. This yeah, this nishta, these things that go away from, and he gives the different ways they are nullified gradually, and that. So when he says here nishta, you become fixed up in devotional service. So those anarthas from it's just at the level of bhajana kriya, just a practice. Turn it down like that. Thank you. So you can see that just at the stage of the beginning practice of practice of devotional service, these those anarthas that arise from duskrita, that is to say, bad deeds, sinful activities, they are almost completely gone. but the ones from past sins, your previous bad deeds, this life or the next life, uh, 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 are still around for a while. And so these so they're partially eliminated, but the bad deeds are one's from offenses and from uh, uh, devotional service itself. I assume that means the incorrect practice of devotional service. That these things go away. So then, at the stage of Nishta, being, as Prabhupada said, fixed up in Krishna consciousness, these nullifications are you're not committing so many offenses, not so many bad deeds. They're complete. He has this stage of they're completely gone, arising from previous pious work, because you can be attached to the results of pious work too. You're enjoying those fruits. Those things are still there a little bit. And then notice he has like this absolute ajantiki, without any chancing of their going away. They don't come back. There's no chance of return. They're gone, absolutely disappeared. That happens at the stage of ruchi. That begins to happen. These kinds of nullification or unwanted. So he says the symptoms of nishta. We can move up the screen a little bit. You can see the absence of 5 obstacles: sleep, the tendency to sleep during japa. That's easy enough. Shravana and Kirtana is probably a little harder, but yeah, it was a hard time. I remember when I was a new temple president and would have all the people who lived in the ashram in the temple room for japa. It was hard enough just to get them there. And then I noticed a lot of people, when they're chanting their japa, they would start to sleep. So I got a squirt bottle that had a good range, 6 or 8 feet. And somebody fall asleep, I go. Years later, some of them thanked me for it. I was simply an irritant, but that's what we did. But there is a tendency to sleep. And this vishepa, inattention or distraction, thinking or talking about mundane things while engaged in devotional service. Basically, that's like the big one for japa, because when you're chanting japa, your mind is supposed to be fixed on the holy name, and it slips away. And so one has to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra at least on the clearing stage. And if you look at just while chanting japa, if you're inattentive or distracted, even during japa or kirtan, thinking of other things, that's inattentiveness. And I mentioned this before, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it is from this offense that all other offenses spring. This inattentiveness while chanting, distraction, thinking about other things, making plans. Prabhupada said no scheming during japa, and he used the word scheming in this Indian sense of making plans. A scheme is sometimes just a map of a schematic diagram or something. So this is this inattentive, because the mind wants to wander. It's loose. It's full of all ideas. They come bubbling up from you don't know where, and then, hunger, thirst, all of a sudden you sit down to chant your japa and you realize something, oh, now I'm thirsty, you have to stop it. So this is Vishepa. And so even when these things are gone, you're not sleepy, you're not distracted, but there's just simply no enthusiasm at all for it, and you have to force yourself. And in the beginning, that might has to be that apratipatti, not be interested. As you make a little more advancement, you start chanting Hare Krishna, and without one or two mantras, you start to really feel enthusiastic about it, that this apratipatti goes away pretty quickly. But, and then kashaya, impurity of stain, the innate tendency toward qualities such as anger, greed, and pride. This, I take it to be a general disposition that may be there from many lifetimes, maybe. Some kind of constitutional state of anger, or easier to get anger, or be greedy, or to be proud. It's just there all the time, and it's kind of in there always, and it takes a while for that to go away. It just is like really there. And I've mentioned before, we brought our subtle body from previous lives, so you don't know what's in there. So just say, I'm sorry, Krishna, it's there, that's in my mind, please, you're in my heart, please destroy them. You don't have to destroy them yourself, you just have to ask Krishna sincerely to do it. Because it's maybe beyond your capacity, but it's not beyond Krishna's capacity. And he wants us back more than we want him, so if you ask him, he'll do it. And you just can't say, well, kindly, remove all my materials out, but not this one, leave that alone. I want to just, one more time to see a Broadway show or whatever. I won't be satisfied. And that requires faith. You have to, faith means that if I attain Krishna consciousness, I am not going to be lacking in anything. Because somehow you may think, well, what about this? What about that? What will I be able to do that? You just have, that's the faith. And then rasasvadas, the taste for material enjoyment. So there may be the opportunity for some material sense pleasure, and therefore you get easily distracted. And you notice that's pretty high up there. Those tastes are sometimes deep-rooted, and they come up, and then you have to. Anyway, so that's these characteristics of Nishter that's here. How far did I get along with this comment, this purport?
Just the very beginning.
Okay, the mind is not transformed, he says, when it's fixed by the agitations of lust, greed, and other qualities such as anger, illusion, and hatred, which arise from rajas and tamas. This means that by lack of taste for material objects, the state of ruchi, the appearance of relishing the hearing, chanting, and other processes arises. In the previous state, the mind was pierced by the sharp arrows of lust and greed and so on. How could the mind be satisfied in that state? How could the mind attain real taste for chanting in that state? A person afflicted with pain cannot relish food because, you're distracted by the pain. After this, that is this stage, the mind becomes fixed, stitam, in the Shuddha Sattva deity of the Lord, Sattva. This is the stage of asakti. That's his commentary. So this word that's brought up here by him, asakti, there's a taste, but asakti means addiction. Not just a taste, but it's an addiction to Krishna. That's why this this asakti is here. And then the next text 20, this one is now discussing the stage of bhava. So this text 20, evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhukti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has become enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. So notice the evam, thus, enlivened in the mind. So you notice this the mode of unalloyed goodness is not in the text explicitly, but this is what it means. You're in the state now of transcendental. There's the mode of goodness, sattva, but the spiritual stage is called vishuddha sattva. V is a kind of all-purpose Sanskrit intensifier. So goodness is sattva, but there's this other, but even in the material mode of sattva, there's a little, tinge of passion on one end, a tinge of ignorance at the other. But the spiritual state is vishuddha sattva. Prabhupada sometimes calls it purified goodness. Here he says unalloyed, unmixed goodness. So thus, he's just all translating this thus. In the mode of unalloyed goodness, that's what this is referring to. Pranasa manasa, the mind is enlivened. Prasana, excuse me, I said pranasa, prasana. Prasanatma is enlivened by, and notice here where he says yogataha, by contact. Remember that yoga means to link or join. That's the basic yuj from the Sanskrit verbal root yuj. So he's joined Bhagavat Bhakti in the devotional service of the Lord. He's in contact. See, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service. Whose devotional service? Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha. That's become enlivened, has done this. Then Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam. Here Tattva he is translated as knowledge, but it's Vijnanam. Prabhupada uses the word this knowledge is Vijnanam, it's scientific. Remember, Jnana is book knowledge, Vijnana is experience knowledge. Even in modern day, if you wanted to translate, that's used by people who still use Sanskrit. Modern science is Vijnana, not just Jnana. Because Vijnana means, it's Jnana, it's knowledge, but Vijnana, intensified knowledge, that is by your direct perception. And that is Bhagavat Tattva, this knowledge, established knowledge, or realized knowledge of regarding the Lord, Bhagavat Tattva. The principle Tattva is thusness, it's essential knowledge, kind of. And then Mukta Sangasya Jayate. This is the liberation from Sangha. It means here material association. There's sadhu sangha, but there's also asadhu sangha too. This is you want the sadhu sangha, but none of the other. Bhanu Swami's translation: thus the mind becomes joyful and satisfied on attaining rati. So this is the idea. Rati means this taste, the preliminary taste of prema, as the stage of bhava, and then finally prema develops, accompanied by the appearance of complete detachment. It says this is this mukta sangasya, complete detachment. The devotee then experiences the Lord's form, qualities, pastimes, powers, and sweetness. He gives a whole list there of what's happening. Prabhupada says here, a living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. Huh?
Are you reading the book?
Yeah. Can we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know we're running a little late. This is the purport to
20.
Oh, to 20. Okay, that's what happened. I got the wrong one. There we go. No wonder. Okay. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.3, it is stated that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. Most men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankerings, ignorance, and sleep. So that's the two modes there. Out of many such man-like animals, man-like means human-like animals, there is actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. And out of many such thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So he shows here, you come to humans and then follow prescribed duties properly, varnashram dharma, then successfully, then you may know scientifically, others by direct experience about the Lord. And then he quotes points to Bhagavad Gita 1855, that this Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana, this direct scientific knowledge of Krishna, is only understood by Bhakti Yoga. The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spiritual. You're not your body, and you're not your mind either. As soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. So this is an important point of Prabhupada, is by Brahmana by qualification. I have taken hippies and made them into happies, because that's the qualification of a Brahmana, is you're on the mode of goodness, and that's happy. So the Brahmana is a symbol of sattva guna, or the mode of goodness. Any others who are not in the mode of goodness are either kshatriyas, vaishyas, shudras, or less than the shudra. The Brahminical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava, in fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage the conception of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. In other words, on that stage, you may get some awareness of the impersonal Brahman, but to the personal, you have to go further. Prabhupada said about a Brahmana, a Brahmana is someone who can learn anything and teach anything. That's a Brahmana. That's a material qualification. It's rare, but that's what it is. So here is this transcendence, say, the scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead, Krishna. The science of the personality of Godhead is the subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual line. So you become, they become the BA level or BS level, you're a student, and then you're like a postgraduate student, and that's the PhD level, the doctorate level. So he says that among people who are in the spiritual line, the Vaishnava is more than a Brahmana. Already has the Brahminical qualification, but now takes the next course, so to speak. Foolish men, or men with a poor fund of knowledge, do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contaminations of the material modes, even up to the stage of Brahmana. So that's why I want to stress that our regular principles are principles of knowledge. Pratyaksha avagamam gives you pratyaksha avagamam dharmam, direct perception. And so if you want to come to this stage and to understand transcendence, this is how you do it. This is you need to be free from the contaminations of the material modes, even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava, in the enlivened state of liberation, not just freedom from suffering from, you know, this neutral stage, but the enlivened stage of liberation, where you actually have positive happiness and connection with God that's ever increasing. The qualified Brahmana becomes a Vaishnava in the enlivened stage of liberation. He can know what is actually the personality of Godhead. So remember that phrase, the enlivened state of liberation. This is our stage, or our state, not just liberated, but the enlivened state of liberation. So we have to stop now. And we'll continue. I'll mark my pages here of my notes.
Thank you very, very much. This is, once again, a lot to think about, a lot to discuss here. So we'll open up the lines for any questions or comments that people might have. If you are on Zoom, you can use the raise hand button, or you can just type in a quick comment into the chat box and let us know that you have a question. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and type your comment or question into the comment section there, and I'll read it aloud. And Adi Devi is first. Go ahead and ask a question, Adi Devi.
Hare Krishna Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for the wonderful class. Gurudev, one of my questions is related to the definition of the three modes. What constitutes the mode of goodness, basically? Would it be chanting while giving up offenses, or waking up in the mode of goodness at a fixed time every day?
Mm-hmm.
So when, according to the Bhagavad Gita, people in the mode of goodness, they wake up in the mode of goodness before sunrise every day. And we are also chanting while giving up offenses. So sometimes I can't wake up at a fixed time every day. So does that imply I'll never be able to be situated in the mode of goodness till I do so? Or being able to chant while giving up offenses can help me get to that stage?
Yes, chanting while trying to give up offenses will help get you to that stage. Yes, sleep by itself is the mode of ignorance, of course, and how fast you can transition from that mode. You know, one thing to do is just simply get up very quickly, go to the sink and put cold water on your face. You might find that works very well to wake you up, or even take an ice cube and put it in the back of your neck. Those things may also help. Just that, you need some sleep every day, and people who artificially don't get enough sleep, their minds, they can't stay awake when they chant japa. So you should get enough rest but just in a regulated way. So there's nothing wrong with sleeping, and so wouldn't artificially just try to give up sleep before you're ready for it. But at least, when you get up, it's nice to be able to do it at a regulated time, and fairly quickly to get yourself in a position where you can start chanting as soon as possible. And if you're living at home, in an ashram where you would get up and take a cold shower, brush our teeth, evacuate, all that stuff, and take a shower. At least Luke cold. Then, as soon as possible. At least if you have things to do, if you have children to take care of or various other things you have to do. But then at least if you have the time to chant a round or two before you start doing other things, that also helps, It also helps if you have memorized some verses that you can just say to yourself all the time, that reminds you of who Krishna is, who you are, and so on. Yeah.
So as soon as we give up offense, as soon as we give up laya and things, we come fixed on stages of Nishta, on the stage of Nishta, as you had discussed, isn't it? So that's a symptom of the
Yes.
stage of Nishta.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Adi Devi. Anybody else have, excuse me, anybody else have comments or questions? Shakti, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I heard that Albert Einstein also read the Bhagavad Gita, but then he also created like the bombs. So, like, why would he like create bombs after reading the Bhagavad Gita? That's my question.
I don't think it was Einstein who read the Bhagavad Gita. It was, who was it? It was another scientist who had read it, because when the atomic bomb went off with its first test, he quoted the Bhagavad Gita. I have become death and destroyer of the world, and I've come to engage all people. When he, oh yeah, Oppenheimer.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's Oppenheimer, who was the one who was the scientist, the atomic scientist who saw the first test that they did at in New Mexico. Yeah, wasn't Einstein.
Oh, but wait, but look here though. But this is in Dutch, but then this says Albert Einstein at the back of the Bhagavad Gita. Like, I don't know if you can read it. It's like mirrored, but it says Albert Einstein, and then his like thing in Dutch. Why is it on the Bhagavad Gita on the back of the Bhagavad Gita though?
I don't know what it says. I haven't read that edition yet.
Oh,
You gotta hold it up and not move it.
okay. It's in another language. Like, can you see?
It is in Dutch, huh?
I can translate it though.
Oh yeah. So it says here Albert Einstein. When I read the Bhagavad Gita, the only question that remained was how God created the universe. All the rest were just unnecessary or something.
Oh, really?
It's like the back of the Bhagavad Gita.
So
but-
I guess he did read it then, huh? I don't remember seeing that before.
But I have to say he also regretted creating the bombs.
Yeah, he did. He realized later what happened. He didn't, wished he hadn't. But anyway, yeah, he said he did regret it.
Okay.
A lot of people, the German philosopher Schopenhauer was really, he became, he read a Latin translation of a Persian translation of the sense of the Upanishads. And he used to read that all the time. The German philosopher Schopenhauer. Can you imagine a Latin translation of a Persian translation of the, that's how it had to happen. But then, yeah, people began to know it in the 19th century in the West, the Bhagavad Gita, and became interested in it.
Also, like, he also did like believe that God was impersonal, but did he believe that he was personal after reading this, or did he still believe that God was impersonal after reading the?
Yeah, I think he believed he was impersonal. I mean, what came to the West was the Ramakrishna Mission version of the Bhagavad Gita, which says that bhakti is for the emotional, and they can't quite raise themselves to the level of the impersonal God. So that was their teaching. That the impersonal was higher than the personal. For people who weren't up to the impersonal, then they could satisfy themselves with theism. They thought that was higher.
Until Supriya commented, the science done by Einstein was used by nuclear scientists to create the bomb, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and research.
Yeah, well, he's the one that came out with that E equals MC squared, that matter itself had, even the slightest amount of matter had huge amounts of energy inside, and if you can just figure out how to release it, you would have a bomb. And the one that would get the metal that you would use would be one of the radioactive ones, because it was already loosely held together, and they did, he figured out how it could be done.
Thank you, Shakti. Good questions. Bhakti Pala, you have some question? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Thank you for the class. I had two questions actually, but I'll start with one. So about the stage of Shuddha Sattva or just Sattva Gun in general. Once we're there, the kind of the impetus of being Krishna consciousness becomes less because it's quite comfortable there. And, so how do we go beyond that and still retain the motivation? Not that I'm so much a person in mode of goodness, but, yeah,
well,
like when you're not so much suffering.
From the, at least my encounter with the mode of goodness was a side effect of Krishna consciousness rather than something I was in the mode of goodness and then came up to Krishna consciousness. That was the sort of steps I went through, because you're certainly not taught how to be in the mode of goodness in a typical, our standard of advancement in America and the prosperous West is usually the standard of the mode of passion. That's what you want to do, get as much money as possible, and so people are not very satisfied. So for most devotees, that would just be the side effect. Your suffering goes away as a sort of a side effect of trying to become Krishna conscious, rather than just become in the mode of goodness. Yeah, they don't really teach the mode of goodness anymore, and because how do you make money, We just had, this big Christian university, the guy who was in charge.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see how hard it is, these Christian universities and all these other things. They're not even, capable of the mode of goodness at all anymore. It's just, and the people, I notice, like, in universities, the most successful people are the ones who can bring in money. alumni annual giving is very big, and if you can attract industry or somebody to do something in your place, you know, and that's and to make discover inventions that can then make money for the university. You know, the people have the patents. It's almost entirely the idea of what success is.
Yeah. I was also thinking of my kids because they're, you know, they're more or less raised with the principles and the philosophy. So, you know, they have a certain standard of living and a certain, you know, perception of the world. You know, even when their dad died, somehow or other, they were kind of, you know, they had the framework to kind of digest it. So they have the philosophy, they have the principles, but they don't really have the practice of, you know, bhakti and chanting. And they don't really feel the need for it either, somehow. I was just also wondering about that. You know, why would they?
You join yourself with a lot of parents. You're not the only one. And sometimes then they may not make any further, but whatever they've gotten, that's permanent. And so the next life will be a human life, and presumably they can pick up where they left off again. Or we hope. You know, with children, you do the best you can, and then you got to let them go. Won't help to nag and be there in case, you know, they suffer some setback and wonder what went wrong, and maybe they'll turn to Krishna consciousness.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bhakti-Pala. Practical question. Your wife has a comment. She says, we do meet people who are satisfied with giving charity, varnashrama, etc.
We do, she says.
That's what.
I guess so. There are some people like that. I would say an increasingly rare group, but
Essentially unmotivated, right?
mm-hmm.
Without wanting something in return.
Yeah, yeah. Most people want donor recognition. The name on a plaque somewhere.
On a park bench.
On the park bench, right?
Vijay Krishna Prabhu has his hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, you can
yes.
be heard.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for your service. My question is related to Maharaj, my obeisances. And thank you for the class. And sorry for being late. My question is related to the synonym, related to 1 to 19. The synonym, the last synonym, prasidati, thus becomes fully satisfied. And then in the translation related to this synonym, I read, then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. So my question is, why is it that sometimes we find the Acharya saying that what really matters in terms of bliss is for us to be cooperators in his bliss, because we are his parts and parcels. And then I find verses like this ending with this giving importance to the fact that the happiness of the devotee as his part and parcel is always important, is also important. It seems to me that it is also important. But what is the situation in terms of bliss? What really matters is Krishna's happiness or our own happiness?
Prabhupada said once that a devotee, a pure devotee, has no way of experiencing happiness except by seeing that Krishna is happy in all respects. I think that's pretty much a direct quotation. That's how we want to see that Krishna is happy in all respects. And we know what makes Krishna happy. And so that's why, for example, every devotee serves another devotee. We all have our spiritual masters, and we know that by serving the devotee, Krishna also becomes happy. And so that's another way that we can satisfy Krishna. Basically, Krishna, somehow or other, although he's in the spiritual world and is surrounded by wonderful, perfect devotees already, who are completely faultless and completely pure, he still wants us back. And that would seem to suggest that there's something we can do, we can offer to Krishna that he would like to have. And so we should try to satisfy him by ourselves becoming pure devotees, and say to Krishna, what do you want me to do? That's our question to Krishna. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What can I do next? How can I make you more satisfied? How can I serve you more? Sometimes we don't know. But if we're asking Krishna all the time, what can I do for you? Then Krishna will point it out. It won't be that subtle that you won't be able to understand it. So I think that's how we can understand what makes Krishna happy.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And two more questions, and then we'll wrap it up for today. Tulsi Priya, you have a question? Go ahead and ask. You can unmute yourself.
Okay. This just popped into my head, and it's a little bit complex, I think, so please bear with me. So you were quoting Prabhupada saying that the devotee is only happy when he sees that Krishna is happy in all respects. So, and then another thing that kind of popped into my head, and I guess I'm asking for your help in formulating this question. In the Upanishad, it talks about how the complete whole, and that we experience all sorts of incompleteness due to our incomplete understanding of the complete whole, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is that seeing, and then another aspect of it, this is all happening very quickly in my brain, so that's why I'm trying to pull it all together. I remember one time Shesha Prabhu gave a class, and I don't know if he was quoting Prabhupada or some Shastra, but he said something like, each of us is a particular way in which Krishna wants to enjoy, which I thought was very nice. So my question is that when we are not happy, is it because, one more thing. The other thing is that Krishna, basically, he exists for his own pleasure, correct?
He what?
Exists for his own
He
pleasure.
exists for his own pleasure.
Yes.
So if we're part and parcel of Krishna and we're not happy, it's because we're connected from Krishna, correct?
Yes.
So if we're each of us a way in which Krishna is meant to enjoy, then it's the idea is that we have to understand that our own happiness, understand for ourselves, not just a matter of desire, but of our existence, that we will not be happy unless we are connected with Krishna in the way that Krishna wants to enjoy.
Correct.
Okay, it seems very simple, but it was kind of a bunch of coming together at one time. In other words, we think I have to do something, and we think it's up to us, but there's a specific way in which Krishna wants to enjoy through us, and we become aware of that through the spiritual master, and we simply have to act in that knowledge.
Well, yeah, the first thing that we know that what we want to do ourselves is ourselves come closer and closer to Krishna, and also to try to bring others along the same way. That much we know. Then when we are on the pure spiritual platform, there are other ways that we can serve Krishna. But you can see that what Lord Chaitanya did was, Lord Chaitanya is really Krishna's homage to devotees, because he's God and he wants to be a devotee. In fact, he wants to see what it is about Radharani. What is she feeling? She feels more bliss than I do. So you should look at that part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it explains the desires that Krishna has, that Lord Chaitanya is fulfilling, and we should follow in his footsteps in that way. So look at that. It's very interesting to read it over again, and keep them in mind. Krishna's trying to understand what is about me that attracts Radharani so much, and anyway, she feels more bliss than I do, and so on. So God wants to be a devotee, so there must be something there.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Tasipriya. Although you said it's simple, it's actually essential also, understanding that. Bhakti Impala has one question, and she says, in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport at the end, he translates sattva as the pure goodness deity. Can you comment on where the deity comes from?
I'm not quite sure about this translation of the it's Shuddhasattva deity, and the deity's got a small d. So I'm just assuming it's talk about your mind is fixed upon the Lord, who is the deity, who is in Shuddhasattva. That's all I can imagine. It may not be talking about a deity like the kind we see on an altar, but just the personality of Godhead.
Okay, I think we'll wrap it up here for today. Thank you all very, very much for coming and hearing and participating. It always makes it even better when we have questions and comments and reflections. It really churns the Bhagavatam, as we say.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
And
Hare
thank you to
Krishna.
all of you on Facebook as well. We know that you're there. Mandaleshwari Devidasi says, Hare Krishna, Officer Obeisances. Thank you all for joining. And the next class will be Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern on Krishna book. And then we'll just continue our Sunday, Tuesday class schedule.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you
all
very
very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Wonderful.